I wrote 2 full books in the last 10 days without using any AI tools. And you can too. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly the process that I use, how I come up with ideas, how I get that onto paper, and how I finish all of these projects. If you're interested in the books that I just mentioned, they're both available on Amazon right now as ebooks. You can get the link down below, or if you stay to the end of the video, you can also find out how you can listen to the audiobook for each of them for free. So step 1 for me is obviously coming up with an idea or a premise for this story, article, whatever you're writing about. A lot of people have a difficult time coming up with ideas because they think it needs to be perfect. For me, the idea is basically just setting up the sandbox that you're going to work within. So you could come up with a million premises. It doesn't matter if it sounds bad because the writing portion is where you're actually going to create the story and sculpt it into something. So one of my books is about a child who adopts a giraffe who then ends up becoming a stand-up comedian. Obviously, like a crazy premise. It's fiction, so it doesn't have to be based in reality. And it's not something that clearly has like a lot of backstory in it, but you're going to fill it out later. So just come up with an idea, something that you think's fun, interesting, exciting, whatever the case is. It doesn't have to be great because you're going to refine it later. Just build the sandbox, come up with the premise. So that's step 1. Step 2, come up with a very clear outline. So for me, I like to start opening a Word doc at this point, right? Because I'm writing. So I open a Word doc, I put the premise at the top. Boy adopts giraffe, giraffe becomes stand-up comedian. Okay? Now we outline exactly what has to happen for us to tell this story. Okay? So this is where you come up with the basic structure of what your story is going to be like. So chapter 1, we have to introduce this boy, right? Which means we probably introduce his family because he's a young boy. He's not living by himself. He could be, but in my story, he's not. So you start making these little choices and lay out everything. So chapter 1, we introduce the boy and his family. Chapter 2, he has to get this giraffe, right? Because the whole thing is he adopts a giraffe. So how does he do that? So we cover that. Chapter 3, now this giraffe is with this boy. How does the giraffe do its first gig as a stand-up comedian? Or how does the boy discover that the giraffe is a comedian or could be a comedian, is funny? You know, so basically you pick apart that premise that you've created and logically go through and list out all of the steps that need to happen to get from 0, the person that you're telling the story to, obviously having no information about the story, to the end where you reach this conclusion that you had in mind from your premise. So that's 2. You outline everything. I like to separate it by chapters at that point. You don't have to, but for me, it just makes sense to be like, okay, obviously we introduce the boy, then we can introduce the giraffe, but that's another subject. That could be chapter 2. Now the 2 are living together. What is that like? Chapter 3. So you create this outline doc. Next, you got to do the writing, the hard work, putting pen to paper. And for me, what I find is helpful is I focus on word count. Obviously, some writing is better than others, right? Sometimes you're in the mood, you really are just like nailing it. You're telling the story in a very fluid, emotional, easy to understand way. And other times it's like running into a brick wall. But focusing on word count for me personally helps a lot. So I aim for between 3,000 and 4,000 words a day to match this pace of writing books quickly. The most important part is putting the words down. Okay, so I need to hit that word count. I can always go back and edit later, right? But I follow the outline, I write the words, and I make sure that I fill out following the structure that I laid out in my outline so that it all makes sense by the time I get to the end. One thing that you can do if you find that you're stuck somewhere is, since you have the entire story outlined, you can jump and write out of chronological order. I typically don't do that, but let's say, you're really excited about writing the end and you're stuck on chapter 4 currently, just jump all the way to the end and write it. And then, you can jump around and fill in the spots because you already have miniature outlines within your outline doc of what each chapter is going to be. So now you've done the hard work, you fill it out, you write the words, you hit the word count, you get through the end. Now you have your draft. that's your manuscript that you can do whatever you want with. Obviously, you can go back and edit. It's probably a good idea. You can start sharing with people to read and get their feedback and improve your story. Or if you are just ready to move on to the next thing, go ahead and publish it or put it away, whatever you feel like you should do with your art. I would recommend sharing it, obviously, because what's the point of going through the work and effort and finishing a project if you're not going to actually share that out and have others experience it? So anyway, that's my process. Really easy. 3 steps. 1, come up with the premise. 2, outline based on that premise. 3, fill in the outline, shooting for a target word count every day. If you follow that, I know that it'll put more structure into your life as a writer. You'll be able to figure out your process and what tips and tricks work for you. And then you can really settle in, put out the word count, and get the projects done. Now, if you've stuck around, I really appreciate that. Go ahead and subscribe if you're into this kind of content. If you would like to listen to those 2 books that I mentioned before. They're called Beaming Out and Laugh Giraffe. 2 completely different books, different premises, both written by me. I am going to be recording audiobooks in their entirety of me reading both of them, and I'll be posting them here on YouTube for free. The catch is I have 2 different formats that I'm going to try. I'm not sure if it makes more sense to do a single video super long with the entire book so that you could just listen and not worry about anything, or if it makes more sense to break it out by chapters or sections and have several videos in a playlist that will play automatically one after the other. So if you could help me and let me know in the comments which one works better for you, either on this video or on the audiobooks themselves, I'm going to post one in each format and kind of see which one you guys prefer. And once I know that, that's what we'll do moving forward, because there are more books coming.